with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Mila Wade, barista and member of the Starbucks Workers United, and the strikes that took place on Monday around Louisville, Kentucky, against Starbucks and other coffee purveyors. Then Oliver Milman, environment reporter for The Guardian U.S., on the ubiquitousness of corporate anti-climate lobbyists. Meanwhile, Trump judge overseeing stolen document case is slow-walking that case. Even asked Bratton to slow his down. Russia attacks Ukraine grain infrastructure in Odessa, threatening the world food supply. And has America's mayor become America's singer? Speculation Rudy Giuliani has flipped on Trump in the J6 investigation. And in a doff protest too much moment, the House passes a Israel isn't racist resolution. Speaking of Israel and Israel itself, tens of thousands protest Netanyahu's assault on an independent judiciary. And Republicans were for it before they were against it. So they look to roll back key measures of the infrastructure bill. Trump false electors were charged in Michigan. Federal judge to hear a challenge to Biden's asylum restrictions. Atlanta City Council sabotaging an anti-cop city referendum. Also, Israel wants Donald Trump to give back artifacts they lent him when he was president. Lastly, Republicans attack LGBTQ-sponsored services in a HUD bill. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is, of course, casual hump day. Well, not casual hump day. I guess just hump day. I don't know. That's the thing. Emma's not here. What's that?
It's an Emma's hump day. Bradley had a misfire on the audio.
Oh, I was wondering what was going on there. If we had like a drop from Emma on hump day. It is a MLS hump day, and therefore I get a little bit. I'm not familiar with the catchphrase, so I don't get it nailed. Let's get right to it. We got a lot to cover today. As I mentioned, the House voted yesterday. This is, I should say, in the lead up, maybe in the wake of the Israeli president addressing Congress. Just for your information, the Israeli president is largely a ceremonial position. Nevertheless, it is an issue because at the very least, the Israeli government's continued occupation and brutality towards the Palestinian people and the ongoing apartheid regime that they have built there. Now, this is not my words. These are the words of scholars, of Israeli scholars, of former members of the Israeli government. There's really no way you can argue that that's not the case. And very hard to argue it is an actual democracy when a significant, like literally millions of people under their control with no sovereignty have no say in how they are governed. On top of which, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, have come out because the Netanyahu government is attempting to essentially get rid of an independent judiciary. The judiciary will stay there. It just won't really have the ability to adjudicate in the event that there is a small majority, or just a majority, a basic majority in their Knesset that overrules the Supreme Court. And to be clear, almost definitionally, if you have a ruling, no, not almost, definitionally, if you have a ruling coalition, you have 50 plus 1 votes, period. And so it really makes the Supreme Court there largely irrelevant, particularly in light of a lot of the policies that there is broad consensus in oppressing the Palestinians. Nevertheless, there was a vote on the House floor sponsored by the Republicans in an attempt, I guess, they thought they had some type of wedge issue, I guess, with the Democrats. We'll have Talib in a second, but the effort was a resolution saying that Israel is not a racist state. The vote was 412 to 9-1. 9 Democrats voted no. Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Summer Lee, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, Andre Carson, and Delia Ramirez. Jayapal, whose comments inspired this, actually voted yes. It was a resolution introduced by some Texas Republican. Here is Rashida Tlaib on speaking on the House floor yesterday.
I am the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, and I have family members all throughout the West Bank and what many people call the illegally occupied territories. But we're here again, reaffirming Congress' support for apartheid, policing the words of women of color who dare to speak up about truths, about oppression, is just not what we should be doing here in Congress. And let's just get this record straight here. This is not something that's made up. The United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Israel's own largest human rights organization, B'Tselem, all agree that Israel is an apartheid state. To assert otherwise, Mr. Speaker, in the face of this just body of evidence, is an attempt to deny the reality and to normalize violence of apartheid. This week, we're going to hear consistently that people touting about this is bipartisan support here. Well, don't forget, this body, this Congress, supported the South African apartheid regime, and it was bipartisan as well. But you don't have to take it from me to understand the racism of an apartheid government. Let's take a moment just to hear Israeli government's own politician in their own words. Direct quotes, not mine. Current Prime Minister Netanyahu, on his policies towards Palestinians, quote, beat them up, not once, but repeatedly, beat them up until it's unbearable, and said that Israel must, quote, crush Palestinian hopes for a fully sovereign state. One of the former defense ministers said Palestinians are, quote, beasts, and they are not human. He's talking about people like my grandmother, Mr. Speaker. How about former Justice Minister who said they should go, as should the physical homes in which they raise the snakes. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. How about another former defense minister said, quote, those who are against us, there's nothing to be done. We need to pick and axe them and cut off their heads. Another quote, there is no such thing as Palestinian people.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
At its core. Mr. Speaker, Israel's own president, who's
The gentlelady's time has expired. Does the gentleman for New York reserve or yield?
I give the gentlelady 30 seconds.
Israel's own president, Herzog, who's going to come before Congress tomorrow, has long advocated against interracial marriages. Did you all know that? Do you care? He said on the news segment, look it up. When he came to America, he said, quote, encountered something that I call an actual plague. I saw my friends' children married and coupled with non-Jewish partners. Israel is an apartheid state. The government is deeply problematic in the way that they are proceeding in the structure of oppression. This year, Mr. Speaker, just like I speak up against injustices here in America, this is about speaking up
The gentlelady's
against
time has expired.
violence.
Does the gentleman for New York
Congress must
yield
stop
or reserve?
funding apartheid.
I think it was.
I don't really have much to add to that.
I think the point she makes about, the UN Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, all these people are going to be citing these organizations to make points about human rights in different parts of the country. But for this moment, we're going to act like those don't exist, that the only people making this criticism are the far left wackos.
Yep.
And basically use this occasion to do a giant bipartisan lie on behalf of something that's being increasingly described by even middle of the road human rights organizations as apartheid.
And I would also, again, just reiterate, I mean, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's not hard to find many former Israeli government officials who have described what's going on in Israel as apartheid for over the course of a decade. And it has gotten worse over that time. And I think even for those people who support the existence of Israel, ignoring what's going on there is the greatest threat to Israel's future existence, in my mind. Because it's not going to work. At one point, this conflict, if that's what you want to call it, or this dynamic has been in existence since the founding of Israel. But let's be clear, this is only 70 years.
Yeah.
75 years.
And the polling among Democrats is really shifting from like very few sympathetic to Palestinians in say 2000 to about almost over 40% now.
Yeah. And at one point or another, Israel is going to become as isolated as South Africa. However, there seemed to be an easier off-ramp for South Africa, or I should say the white minority in South Africa. In this instance, Israel is increasingly led by either religious fundamentalists, total zealots, whose politics are guided by the idea that the Messiah is going to return at one point. And then these sort of, I don't know what you would call them, but ultra, fascistic nationalists. People like Avigdor Lieberman, but more of the current members of the Israeli administration. It's really ugly. So good for Tlaib and those. And let's be clear. How many years out are we from even Tim Kaine boycotting when Netanyahu came?
Yeah.
To the United States. Let's not pretend this hasn't been going on for a while. It's just that there's this sort of, it is very easy to make this about somehow leftists as opposed to just people of conscience.
Yep.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Mila Wade, a barista and member of the Starbucks Workers United. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program Mila Wade, barista and member of Starbucks Workers United. Welcome to the program, Mila.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
All right. So on Monday, there were strikes by Starbucks workers in and around, I guess, the Louisville area, which includes Clarkson, Indiana, which is, I guess, what is it, right across the river? Is that...
Yeah, it's right across the river. I live in downtown Louisville, but the Clarksville store in Indiana is actually one of the closest stores to where I live.
Okay. And so just tell us how many Starbucks stores and workers participated in the strike. And then the thing that really I find fascinating is that there were other coffee chains that were involved in it, at least one, but I think two, right? And so let's just start with the Starbucks one and then tell me how this happened to expand.
Sure. So on Monday, we had 5 stores in the area striking, 3 in Louisville, 1 in Clarksville, and then 1 in Elizabethtown. And then there were also 5 coffee shops under the chain Sunergos who voted to unionize in like the second half of last year. When we started, so my store filed to for a union election last May last year, and at that time there were no other stores in Indiana. The first store in Kentucky had just filed, but hadn't had their election yet. And in the course of that, little over a year now, we've had 7 Starbucks in the Louisville area that have voted to unionize. Sunergos, who was the other one that was on strike on Monday, and then another chain, Heine Brothers, also voted to unionize in that time.
And were all of these shops on strike on Monday, or were there representatives from all of these outfits on strike?
So both Sunergos and Heine Brothers are organized under SEIU. Sunergos is the chain that was actually on strike, but there were baristas from Heine who were also present. And then 5 of the 7 Starbucks that have voted to unionize in the area were on strike.
And so what was the issue at this point? Everybody is unionized or intending to unionize. What was the issue that drove everyone out? And this is, to be clear, this is one-day strike. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. The big issue that kind of, I guess, surrounds all of it is Starbucks' refusal to bargain a fair contract with us. We have had proposals to them, I believe, for 8 or 9 months now, and they have still yet to offer us any sort of counter proposal or anything like that. I was in the bargaining session for my store at the end of last year, and the Starbucks lawyers came in pajamas. They were in the room for about 45 seconds.
Wait a second. Wait. Were they on Zoom?
No, it was in person. It was an in-person bargaining session.
And they came in literally wearing pajamas?
Literally wearing pajamas. Literally wearing pajamas. Of course, we're all dressed up, ready to bargain, but they never even sat at the table. They left before a minute had even passed, and that's the last I've heard of bargaining.
Wait. This is a little bizarre. Where was the meeting held? Like at a hotel?
It was at a hotel conference room.
And so they just came from their room in pajamas to basically say, we're hey everybody, but we're not going to do anything.
Yeah, pretty much. And then they left to recess, and then they never returned.
What do you think that was about? I mean, aside from like the larger story that, and I've heard this story from folks in Buffalo. I've heard this story across the country. People have unionized, workers have unionized, and then 9-12 months later, there's still not a contract. And the idea is that they're hoping that, people will leave the union, or that people get frustrated with the union because they can't come to a contract. I mean, so this is a very well-worn playbook.
Mm-hmm.
But what were they trying to, like, what they were doing? Like, did you have, like, as soon as they walked out of the room, you guys must have been like, what is that?
To be honest with you, I've been in this fight with Starbucks since, like I said, May of last year. And by the time the bargaining session came around, we knew to expect that we would not be treated with any sort of respect or seriousness. So we had anticipated it, but it's still, a major blow. Starbucks is playing a war of attrition to try and wear us down, wait us out. It's not about actually dealing fairly with their workers. It's about the fact that they have infinite time and money. So even though they're supposed to bargain a contract with us, what they can do is just wait it out for so long that they think that people like me, people like the rest of us who have organized our stores, are going to give up on it.
And they know, I mean, because ultimately, right, you guys will file a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board. But Starbucks knows that, like, there are so many of these complaints racking up against these guys that they can just wait it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's hundreds of ULP charges, unfair labor practice charges, against Starbucks at this point. And you just see in the news, like, again and again, where when they have been rolled on, the NLRB is on the side overwhelmingly of the workers. But yeah, they can just wait it out because they know that there are so many of these charges that the legal cost for them, as one of the largest corporations in the world, it's economically more seen as more to their benefit to just wait and pay any legal fees that might come from it.
All right. So with that said, and the pajamas was just a way to basically say, we don't take you guys seriously. We're just maybe we're just here to party, essentially. And so you all went on strike on Monday, and what's the hope with that? What's the plan going forward?
Well, we're going to continue building power like this. Each of the stores, the Starbucks stores that went on strike on Monday, 4 of us had been on strike before, but we had never struck on the same day. 1 had never struck at all before, and then Sunergos had not gone on strike before. And this is the escalation. We're going to continue to press this to build solidarity with other working class baristas, to continue to get more and more stores ready for actions like this for a longer period of time until Starbucks finally comes to the negotiating table for us. To have gone from no union stores in the state or around the state at the beginning of last year to now 10 stores in Louisville going on strike, that is a very rapid escalation, and it's only going to continue.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so give us a sense, a little bit of how much you were involved in the organizing, and what were the steps that, I mean, how did that come about? That's a lot of people unionized over a short period of time. And the idea that it's spreading to other coffee, I guess, chains essentially, or local chains is, I think, really encouraging as well. Give us a sense of how the organizing is going, and if your colleagues at Sunergos and Keen, is it, or
Heine and Sunergos.
Heine and Sunergos, if they have had the same sort of like challenges that you folks at Starbucks have had.
So I emailed Workers United the day after the Buffalo store won their election. I think that is a very common story in a lot of the earlier stores that filed. When the first store in Louisville filed for election, and when we filed, we've been told that that's what helped inspire Heine and Sunergos to pursue it, because, if a couple years ago you had floated the idea of a union coffee shop in Kentucky, it would have been,
right,
no one would have believed that. And it really goes to show that despite any other, prejudices that might exist whenever you hear something like that, the people there are, we all have the same working class interests. And so each of us, filed independently of each other. And then as soon as we realized that we were on the same side of this, we have been in contact and communication with each other. We show up for each other's strikes. We show up at different organizational level events in the area. It's really been an incredible thing to be a part of, because I've never done anything like this before. A lot of us have never done anything like this before. And now suddenly we have like this huge network of friends that are so excited to help us and to stand with us, and us do the same with them. So yeah, I see that only continuing as time goes on.
Is this starting to happen outside of like the barista community, essentially? Like, I mean, is there, are there other, are you folks starting to have talks with other unions or would-be unions? I mean, obviously some of it may be nothing you want to be specific about.
Right.
But to the extent that you can, tell us what those look like.
Yeah, we've had people from other unions show up at our picket lines before. I mean, you can look over the past year or so in Louisville. There's been a pizza shop, a Trader Joe's, a Half Price Books. Those are the ones off the top of my head that have voted to unionize. And then Louisville is also a major UPS hub. And it also has a large UAW presence. And so, yeah, I've spoken with a lot of people from a lot of different local unions. I guess.
Do you think
that's the extent of what I'll say?
Okay. And so, I mean, give me your sense of what's happening this summer. I mean, right now we have, we have some major strikes going on with the writers and particularly the Screen Actors Guild. There's 160,000 workers. We have these sort of spot strikes that are happening with Starbucks. We are about 11 days away, maybe 12 days away from 300,000 plus UPS workers possibly going on strike. And today, or maybe it was yesterday, the pilots who fly UPS, they, even though they're not part of the Teamsters that could be involved in the strike, they have said that they will not cross the picket line, which is a big problem for UPS because they've been training. They've been training folks to drive their trucks. They've been training folks to work in their warehouses. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, to find people who can sort of pick up this stuff right off the bat. But it's that much harder to do it with pilots. And so give me your sense of what you anticipate the next couple of months looking like in terms of labor action.
I mean, I think I speak for, well, I mean, I've spoken with a lot of people about this. There is definitely an electric feeling in the air, for lack of a better way to put it. We're all very excited. People are beginning to see that they have the ability to affect change, to fight for their own betterment and improved conditions. And I think, like, you can see it in Louisville with the us and Sunergos going on strike at once. You can see it, like you pointed out, with the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild. I have friends who are not union, don't work jobs with a union in other parts of life, and they're very excited as well. I think everyone's kind of on the edge of their seat because it feels like something is happening, because something is happening. And I think we're all just very excited to be a part of that.
One of the things I find fascinating about this story is like sort of how you were inspired by what happened in Buffalo. The Sunergos folks were inspired by what you guys did. The Kiney people were inspired by that chain of events. How much like was your consciousness raised with part of the Red State Revolt? Because I know Kentucky, there was a big teacher strike. I guess it was now maybe 2017, maybe it was. So it was some years ago, but I believe they're not even unionized. But they took a fairly dramatic labor action, and got, relative to where they were, a bump in pay, maybe, relative to what they deserve. I'm not quite sure that they're there yet, but how much of that is in the air brewing? Because, Kentucky's not a state you think about when you think about an active labor movement.
I mean, it's not anymore, but if you go back 100 years, it is very much a state that you think about with that. And that underlying current is still in parts of the state, I think. You mentioned teaching. I come from a teaching background, and yeah, you're right. They still absolutely don't get what they deserve to do what they do. I remember the very first conversation I had with a staff organizer with Workers United, they said something to me that I have thought about a lot since then, because I had never really thought about it before, since this was my first time doing this sort of thing. But they said these union drives have a tendency to catch fire. And that's the emotion. That's what's been going on. I think you get so wrapped up in this mindset of what is or isn't possible, or you can or can't do. And without even realizing it, that mindset has been placed upon you to limit ever thinking about organizing or standing up for your rights or the rights of your friends and coworkers and family. And yeah, in that sense, it has dramatically increased. I thought that I had a degree of class consciousness prior to going into all of this, but it has dramatically influenced how I see my peers, how I see big companies like Starbucks, how I see people in general. And it's been very inspiring, because when we went into it with the location we were at, I never really fully expected. We ended up winning our election 14-1. My goal the whole time was just to teach a few people that this sort of stuff could be done. And now we've gone so far above that, because it takes seeing someone else doing it, and you start to challenge those ingrained mindsets that you have, and you realize, well, wait, maybe like I can do that. Maybe I don't have to go home after every shift and soak my feet and cry. Maybe there's more that I can do. Maybe there's more that we can do. And yeah, that's been the crux of the inspiration with that.
That's amazing. And have you noticed that what happened to you in terms of like that class consciousness and that type of imagination with, I mean, if you anticipated, I don't know, that maybe you would lose your vote, 5 to 9 or 5 to 10 or whatever it was, But with those other 13 people who voted with you, and then as it goes on to the other, have you had conversations with people where they've experienced this similar sort of like realization, both in terms of maybe broader dynamics that take place in the context of our politics and our society, and also have expanded their notion, their imagination as to what's possible?
Yeah, so our store, most of the workers are between 16 and 23 years old, probably. For a lot of people, it's their first job that they've ever had. They don't really have anything to compare it to. And being, I think a lot of people in the US in general don't really know what a union is, or didn't prior to all of this catching on. Especially in the area I'm at when we started, no one really knew what a union was. And so that makes you kind of question what you can achieve, because it's not a small or easy thing to organize your workplace. I always tell people, though, that like people will surprise you. That's a big one that I've learned, because once they learn what it is that we're doing, once they learn what a union is, so many times people have asked me, well, why doesn't everybody do this? And you have to say, yeah, why doesn't everybody do this? But it's because that switch hadn't been flipped. And now that it's flipped, it's a completely different experience for everyone. And we're learning how to do it together. But I think we're doing it in the best way. And I'm very proud to be a part of it.
Well, that's great. Mila Wade, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and describing this to us. If there are folks in the Louisville area and they want to, maybe they want to unionize their own shop, or maybe they want to come out next time you guys are involved in a labor action, or things may very well heat up over the course of this summer, how would they get in contact with Starbucks Workers United in that area?
So we have a Twitter and an Instagram. Both of them have the same handle, SBWU Kentuckiana. And to get into contact with the local people directly, that's the best way to do it. You can also go onto Starbucks Workers United website, and there's a place there that you can send an inquiry in, and it'll eventually direct you to us.
All right. Well, really appreciate your time today. Good luck with the rest of the summer and with getting Starbucks to show up dressed like adults and provide a contract. That's just amazing. But nothing, after watching Howard Schultz over the course of the past couple of years in various capacities, there is nothing surprises me. Well, that surprised me a little bit, but very little surprises me about what Starbucks does.
If we had 12 hours, I could tell you stories that are infinitely more unbelievable than that one. That's just small potatoes for what this company has been doing.
Well, maybe we'll have you back, because I'd like to hear some of those. Mila Wade, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll put links to both the Instagram and the Twitter accounts that you mentioned, and good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to Oliver Milman, environment reporter for The Guardian US. The Guardian's been reporting on the ubiquity?
Yep, there you go.
The ubiquity of corporate lobbyists who essentially work for people who are hell-bent on profiting off of the destruction of our climate, and then also end up working for organizations that ostensibly are trying to deal with climate change. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program Oliver Milman. He is the environment reporter, or an environment reporter for The Guardian US. Are you the reporter for The Guardian US on the environment, or hopefully an environment reporter?
Yeah, luckily for me, I don't have to cover the entire planet and everything that goes on in it solo. Yeah, I don't think that'd be good for my work-life balance. So there is.
I don't think it would be good for anybody, frankly,
No.
if there was only one at The Guardian. But
Yeah,
with the way things are going, so just welcome to the program, Oliver. You've written a piece about the more than 1,500 lobbyists in the U.S. are working on one hand for fossil fuel companies, and then on the other hand, working for cities, universities, technology companies, environmental groups that are attempting to stop, essentially. I mean, this is the way that the sort of the business plan of these fossil fuel companies on some level, or slow the business plan or roll it back or whatnot. And we should say we're talking on a day where there has been that yesterday Phoenix broke a record for 19 days in a row of 110 degree more temperatures. We have more wildfires in Canada. Texas, people are melting in Texas. Around the world, we're having, sort of growing swaths of land that are becoming inhabitable or close to inhabitable. And ostensibly, the people who are being paid to argue, really, I mean, ultimately against the fossil fuel industry, are also being paid by the fossil fuel industry. Lay this out for us.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, lobbying has been a slightly kind of murky and opaque world, I think, until recently. We were kind of learning more and more about these kind of lobbyist activities, and this story set out for the first time, really, these kind of overlaps, these links with lobbyists that seem to be lobbying on both sides of the argument. One expert I spoke to said that they're essentially acting as double agents. So you could be lobbying one day for big oil and then be lobbying the next day for an organization that prides itself on its climate credentials. Some of the most progressive cities in the US employ fossil fuel lobbyists, incredibly. Chicago shares a lobbyist with BP. Philadelphia has a lobbyist who works for the Coke network of companies. Los Angeles has a fossil fuel lobbyist too. Even cities that are suing big oil for climate damages to kind of make up some of the losses that they're enduring because of heat waves and floods and so on. Even they are using big oil lobbyists. Baltimore, which is suing big oil, shares a lobbyist. It had a lobbyist shared with Exxon. Environmental groups, like you say, share lobbyists with big oil and gas, as well as the big tech companies that have espoused so much on climate change. Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they all share lobbyists with big oil, and there's a kind of fundamental kind of issue here in terms of a kind of conflict of interest, and also undercutting the work you say you're doing on climate change, while your lobbyist on other days of the week looks to further the interests of ExxonMobil.
But surely there is a lobbyist ethics committee that oversees the ethics of lobbyists and would have proclamations and rules governing this conflict of interest. And I'm sure that would outline, I'm sure there's a code of ethics amongst lobbyists where they promise on their, document of choice that they will never provide secrets or insight from, let's say, a lower paying client to a higher paying client. I'm sure what is the name of that organization, the Lobbyist Ethics Committee?
I'm really sorry to do this to you, Sam, but the actual reality of it is that money talks and money rules in this world, and that if you're a extremely wealthy corporation, you can have whatever lobbyist you like, and that lobbyist can choose to work for whoever he or she likes on other days of the week. There's obviously clients can kind of say, well, I'm not going to work with you because you work with X. But in reality, it seems that most of these organizations, these cities, these universities too, there's more than 150 universities that have fossil fuel lobbyists. Most of them don't seem to care. They're quite.
Wait, do they know though? I mean, are they aware of this? I mean, and let's be clear here. It's one thing, like, lawyers have all sorts of clients, but the idea that you would be working for the prosecution and the defense and getting paid a lot more to be on the prosecution, like that, if I was the defendant, or, vice versa, I'm going through a tort case and I'm working for the plaintiff and the defendant's paying me more money, I would be like, I'm not sure I want this person representing me. But do they know? I mean, do these, when, you've got, I mean, it's all through 150 universities, like you say, large tech companies, environmental groups, the Environmental Defense Fund, cultural the new museum in New York City, the LA County Museum of Art. These are all, we're going to have a program here to talk about the environment. I mean, Sundance, we have a documentary, like this is giving advance notice to these industries through these people. I mean, if we're so cynical to believe that a lobbyist would be working in the best interest of its highest paying client, do these other clients, do they all know what the lobbyists are doing, or has it occurred to them? Or is it like when you were looking for comments, were they sort of like, they didn't realize it and they're going back and checking and, we're hemming and hawing for a while? What was their reaction?
I mean, it's unclear if all of them knew. I mean, I spoke to some people who were pretty convinced that not everybody would know. Some of these kind of smaller city governments, they don't have the time or resources to kind of comb through the kind of client lists of these lobbyists. But for the big institutions, the big universities, the big tech companies, the really big cities and kind of county governments, that they know. And a lot of them try to justify it in those kind of terms you put out before, in that lawyers can have different clients. You don't have to share their worldview. They can be professional enough to separate these things. And some of the big environmental groups even kind of said it's useful to have a fossil fuel lobbyist because Republicans won't really talk to them. But if they have a fossil fuel lobbyist, that opens a doorway to get access. So a lot of this is about access, power, money, influence, and the fossil fuel industry is the biggest show in town. They're the wealthiest, some of the wealthiest corporations that have ever existed. And of course, they have the best lobbyists. So if you want the best lobbyists who are going to get you a deal struck in a state capital or in Washington, D.C., you're going to want those same lobbyists. There does seem to be, though, that fatal kind of conflict of interest. Sometimes it's really jarring. I mean, State Farm, the insurance company, which recently said it's pulling out of California for new homeowner policies because of the wildfire risk. You can't, if you're a homeowner in California now, you can't get a State Farm.
They did the same in Florida, I believe, too.
Yeah,
just the other day.
Because so essentially their business model is being attacked by climate change. It's costing them a huge amount of money, and yet they have fossil fuel lobbyists working in more than a dozen states. I mean, it seems to be a kind of jarring contradiction in aims. There's even these top ski resorts, Jackson Hole and Vail, that are seeing their snow melting away because of rising global temperatures. They have lobbyists that also work for fossil fuel companies. So it seems entirely counterproductive, but I think it kind of lays bare the kind of myriad influence of the fossil fuel industry, how deeply embedded it is in society, and how it just isn't rejected by those, even those that say they're campaigning on climate change. The fossil fuel industry isn't seen as toxic in the way that maybe the tobacco industry would.
there's two. I mean, it seems to me there's like two sort of categories, right? Like, like the State Farm and the Aspen Mountain Company or whatever it is. Their interests are certainly harmed by fossil fuel industry, but they're not in the business of like directly lobbying for legislation policies that are going to curb the fossil fuel industry. And I can see the logic, at least. I mean, it's gross because I do think I would like anybody associated with that industry to be considered pariahs, frankly. But I can see the logic of like, because these guys represent Exxon, when they go knock on the door of a congressman, the congressman opens the door, even if in that moment they're not there for Exxon, but they already have that relationship and that's the way it works. I can understand the logic of that. But I don't understand how, if you're the Environmental Defense Fund, you can think that when that guy walks through the door representing the Environmental Defense Fund's, priorities, that they're not sort of like crafting a way for this lawmaker to sort of, here's how you can pay lip service to my client, make me look good, make them happy, but also the lip service is one thing, but we'll keep the rest of the body and all the interests, for the bigger paying client intact. Here's teaching you how to split the difference, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're entirely right. And James Browning, the head of F-, which is this group, he's a former Common Cause lobbyist himself. He set up this group to bring together all these public records. I recommend people check out this database to see these kind of strange conflicts. But he kind of pointed out that this is part of the reason why we're in such a mess on climate change, is that environment groups and have sought these kind of short-term wins, haven't really thought about the broader strategy of delegitimizing the fossil fuel industry in corridors of power. And so therefore these kind of shared lobbyists have become a kind of horrible habit for them. They've normalized and legitimized the fossil fuel industry by dealing with them in this way, and for kind of short-term political expediency. And unfortunately this year we've seen the outcome of that kind of approach. Unfortunately, we've had the hottest week probably has ever been recorded, the hottest June ever recorded. This year will probably be the hottest ever recorded. That they're not really getting the wins that they would hope to by pursuing this strategy, it would seem.
Did you like question them on that? Like, I'm curious as to how they sort of justify it. And I also suspect, we have seen the rise of more radical climate groups and movement over the past couple of years, ranging from the Sunset Movement to climate crisis and to, more direct action. And I can't help but think like this is, part of that is, obviously in response to what we're seeing in terms of the climate and just like, record shocking, temperatures in our water and increasingly scientists saying this is outpacing our models and et cetera, et cetera. But and I would imagine it's also partly things like this where big institutions, and one thing for corporations to be sort of whitewashing in a way. I'm not excusing it, but I mean, there's a certain expectation. But if you're an environmental group, I just can't see how nibbling at the edges and giving essentially access to your broader strategy to someone who's getting paid a multiple of what you're paying them to represent them. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is. In terms of what they said, the Environmental Defense Fund made this kind of argument that, having a fossil fuel lobbyist kind of opens doors for them, provides them access to people they wouldn't normally be able to speak to. NRDC, another big green group, like you say, these are big organizations. They have huge donation bases. They're not small, scrappy green groups that they're disrupting speeches by politicians, like some of the others you mentioned. NRDC said, well, as a rule, we don't work with those who work with fossil fuels, but we do when we think it's useful or pragmatic for our aims. So they were quite clear that kind of they have ethics and morals around this to a point. And when that point is reached, then they will quite happily work with those who also work to further fossil fuel companies, the very companies they claim to oppose. So it seems that when it comes to this kind of world, and you speak to people who are in this world, it's very insular. These kind of state capitals in Washington, D.C. It's about relationships, about people you know. The climate crisis may be raging all around us, but the most important thing to many of these people, these kind of insiders, political insiders, is the relationship you have with the lobbyists, with the members of Congress, with those within that system. And it appears that any kind of moral compass is secondary to those that networking opportunity.
I would argue moral compass and frankly strategic and tactical compass too is somewhat problematic. Somewhat related, obviously related. I know you've written a book about the crisis amongst insects, and I have to concede that I haven't read it, but this is a book you wrote. I believe it came out last year. I imagine it's something that you continue to follow. Like, where are we? Give us just for folks who might be interested in this. We hear a lot about the collapse of bees, or bee colonies and whatnot. And what are some of the things that have popped up on your radar, I guess, that speak to the crisis that we're undergoing regarding insects, and just also maybe as a function of like this summer, because of the I guess the La Nina, there's a heightened understanding of, likely when the La Nina cycle ends, there may be a brief respite, but it's like anything else. The underlying baseline is really the issue, and that has clearly gotten into the realm where a La Nina creates this type of extreme situation. Are we seeing anything like that in the insect world?
Yeah, we are. We're seeing these huge changes in the insect world. And one that I didn't really think of until a few years ago before writing this book. I mean, as an environmental reporter, you're drawn to the big kind of flashy things in the natural world, the polar bears, the grizzly bears, going to the Everglades or whatever that might be. You don't necessarily think about bugs. A lot of people obviously find them annoying and irritating. But unfortunately, without them, we'd all be finished within a few months. I mean, they pollinate our food, they break down our waste, they help nourish kind of ecosystems around us. And speaking to scientists for the book, it was quite clear that insects are in a state of crisis. Their population numbers globally are declining by about 1 to 2% a year by the best estimates, due to habitat loss, pesticide use, and climate change. I mean, climate change is the big kind of rolling and threat that's kind of gathering pace. As you mentioned, El Nino is upon us on top of that existing warming trend due to the burning of fossil fuels. And we're being pushed into a climate, we were speaking to scientists the other day, that humans have never seen, never experienced before. We live in this kind of brief window of time, luckily or unluckily, where we will see a climate where no human has ever experienced before. Which is quite a confronting thought, that we've changed our surroundings so much. And insects are among those that are suffering from that. We're seeing pollination drops in many parts of the world, including the US. There's certain crops that are like blueberries, for example, where the yields are dropping because you can't get the pollination for it. You're seeing issues around ecosystems starting to collapse in certain places because of a lack of bugs. Bird populations, obviously birds rely upon insects. Even if you hate bugs, you might love birds. There are many bird species that are suffering as well because there aren't enough insects to eat. So it's very much tied into the kind of broader environmental crisis we have now. They're very much a signpost of where we're going, unfortunately.
Well, we'll put a link to that book, a link to the F- sort of database, I guess it's called, so that people can get a sense of these conflicts and your piece. Oliver Milman, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Sam.
All right, folks. Thus concludes the is there some mic stuff on we having mic problems with
There's
me?
like a momentary interference thing. I don't know if like maybe the cell phone's close to
Maybe my phone. All right. Well, we're going to take a break and we will deal with it in a moment. In the meantime, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the fun half, but you get the free half free of commercials. You also help this show survive and thrive. Jointhemajority.report.com. Also, justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. Get 10% off. What else we got? You can pick up some merch. The AM Quickie. amquickie.com. Head over there and you can get the news in your email box 3 times a week. Become a member. You get it 5 times a week of that subscriber to that. We don't do it on Substack. We do it on Ghost. But you can't say like my Ghost newsletter or something like that.
Ghost me.
No.
Doesn't
the
quite
opposite.
sound right.
Do the opposite of the ghosting of us. Also, the Discord. Majority Discord. I think we're up to close to 10,000 members. We have an incredibly vibrant Discord. So if you have like questions about maybe I have no doubt that there are people in the the Louisville, Anna area who might be interested in unionizing or helping the folks who are out there engaged in labor actions. You go to the Discord. You got questions about where do I get resources if I want to start my own union? Well, people in the Discord can help you out. You want to, and we got all crazy stuff going on there. MajorityDiscord.com. Bradley, what's happened on ESVN this week?
We discussed the big Wimbledon men's final that happened on Sunday. Running backs getting screwed by the NFL. The Titans signing DeAndre Hopkins, and the lawsuit by former coach John Gruden against NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, and what's going on there. YouTube.com/ESPN show for more and for some clips too. And we're very close to 10,000 subscribers. So if anyone wants to help us get there, please do if you haven't already.
Matt, what's happening left refereeing?
Left refereeing, we had Basil Adra, who was on this program last week prior to his detention, talking about bulldozing of his community in Palestine, and also David talked about the Texas border stuff. We went in on that again. So patreon.com/left reckoning. We talked DeSantis making a dumb COVID bet, because it turns out that even among Republicans, most of them are fully vaccinated. So you make that a wedge issue, and it's not really exactly doing what you want to. So patreon.com/left reckoning.
Quick break. Fun half. 646-257-3920.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh
no, Sam Seder. What a fucking nightmare.
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on. Fuck them.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Back.
We are back. Sam Seder. Majority Report. Fun half. Star Fox. Sam, can the Discord get a shofar for our girl Avery? She and her partner Jamie spent the day down at the aquarium in Boston. So I figure a birthday wish from the MR crew would be a nice cherry on top of this birthday Sunday. I don't know. I've lost the thread. We love Avery. Left is best. Happy birthday. Chris Burdick, Sam, it's my birthday. I don't know what sound drops you have handy, but I would sure like to be serenaded into my 57th year by the dulcet tones of John Ashcroft singing his chart-topping signature hit, Let the Mighty Eagle Soar. I can't find that, but I'll give you one of these.
I'm losing it, bro.
How's that? If that's not too much trouble, though, I'll happily settle for a whoopsie.
Oh, I'm charging that thing, so hold on.
Good time to charge it, Matt. Jeez.
We're working on it.
South Carolina socialist Jimmy Dore said this week that climate change action in Ireland is a fear tactic to distract the citizens from war. The rage against the corporate sellout hour is becoming less and less like satire. Yeah, that seems to be also what RFK's perspective is on this too. I mean, I'm flabbergasted, honestly. Do we have that clip?
Which one?
The climate one?
Yeah.
We can get that.
Well, yeah.
Let's play this. I find this just, I find this just absolutely astonishing. I am, tomorrow, RFK Jr. will be in front of the Republican House
weaponization of the federal government committee tomorrow.
I wonder if they will talk about how climate change has been weaponized to oppress people. I mean, this is I understand the sort of the nature of the conspiracy theory that COVID was meant to create a system of tracking people because we were tracking people.
There's literally surveillance of
COVID.
a virus. Yeah.
Yeah. It was for the purpose of the surveillance of a virus. But I can understand, how the conspiracy theory around this COVID was targeted, was manufactured, targeted, and deployed because they want to track us. I don't know who the they is in this situation, but also just so that you know, if you own a cell phone and have an app, they're tracking you. There are what do they call it? EKG. There's a packet of information in all these apps, all the free apps in particular, except for the Majority Report one, where they get this data, they see where you go, they sell it to hedge funds who might be interested in, like, I'm building a mall. Where should I put it? Well, whenever the person's going to these locations, this is how many people go by there in the course of a day. So all of that's happening there. I can understand how the conspiracy theory develops if you're, but this I find just absolutely fundamentally baffling for someone who has a very good record in working for the environment, specifically, like, cleaning up the environment. But this is, I just find baffling. This was when Bobby Kennedy went on the Jordan Peterson show and then decided, I'm going to make this into an ad, I guess.
I've seen the climate apocalypse use fear to induce something approximating the same kind of level of tyranny, as far as I'm concerned, that characterized the vaccine lockdown. So help me sort
Pause
that
it for
out.
1 second.
First of all,
incidentally, think of the words of, like, the climate apocalypse being used to induce fear. Now, I guess he doesn't believe that the climate apocalypse is real. And so I don't know why he doesn't say the so-called climate apocalypse. But, if you believe that there's going to be at least a civilizational climate apocalypse, like, I don't think the planet's not going to blow up. But like our last guest said, we're as hot as a planet as we've been since humans have been on it. And certainly since the civilizations that we've created have existed. Yeah. We're not built. We're not living in the places. We're not in the numbers that are built to come intact through this process. If there is, like, another end to this process. But go ahead.
I've seen the climate apocalypse use fear to induce something approximating the same kind of level of tyranny, as far as I'm concerned, that characterized the vaccine lockdown. So help me sort that out.
First of all, let me just say this about climate. I believe that carbon in the atmosphere and methane does increase warming. Look around, you can see it everywhere. Ice caps are melting, etc. The Greenland ice sheet. I spent a lot of time outdoors, and I see over 69 years, I've seen the changes, and I've seen the mass migration of animals, of southern animals like black vultures, the northern increase in their ranges. I've kept track since I was a kid about when the leaves turns, and it's steadily moved up each year. And so I see that all of my senses are telling me that the warming is occurring. My opinion is basically, as I said, it's based on common sense. I agree 100% with you that this crisis is being used as a pretext for clamping down totalitarian controls the same way that the COVID crisis was. And it's the same people, it's intelligence agencies, it's the World Economic Forum, it's the Billionaires Boys Club at Davos, and it's the same kind of cabal of people who will use every crisis to stratify society toward, greater power for the super rich and greater power for the military, greater power for the intelligence apparatus, and less power for everybody else. A war on carbon is not going to solve the problem if we don't have a habitat left.
All right, pause it. Hold on for 1 second. We have to. So he lays out that he thinks that climate change is real, and if people find anecdotes effective to make that case, by all means. But what totalitarian controls have we seen that are deployed in the name of climate change? Subsidies to electric vehicles, subsidizing, heat transfer pumps. I mean, like, we are so far away from totalitarian controls in the name of climate crisis.
Yeah.
In fact, we need to be closer to what
Way
I
more.
think some would argue are totalitarian controls. Like, let's nationalize our power grid. Let's nationalize our oil refineries. Let's nationalize let's not give away federal lands in leases to be drilled upon. Let's revoke leases. Let's take it out of shareholders who have invested in a poison, not unlike Big Tobacco or Monsanto, who, Bobby has fought against. And I mean, this is just bizarre and completely unsubstantiated. I mean, and to say that, like, I believe in climate change is happening, and then to say, however, it's being used as it's not being used as anything. We can barely get any type of reform associated with it.
I mean, I appreciate them doing the COVID stuff and the fossil fuel stuff, because both of those things it's billionaire anti-regulation libertarianism disguised as populism.
You cannot mean that at all, Matt. But let's go see what the solution to climate change is, as opposed to the totalitarian measures that we're taking to deal with climate change, like, I guess, presumably, light bulbs and shower heads.
Kind of cabal of people who will use every crisis to stratify society toward, greater power for the super rich and greater power for the military, greater power for the intelligence apparatus, and less power for everybody else. A war on carbon is not going to solve the problem. If we don't have a habitat left at the end, my approach to energy is using free markets and not top-down control. We can recover what we had, but we just have to stay out of fear, because that is the weapon of tyrants. If you like this video and you want...
What top-down control? What are free markets going to... What?
Yeah.
There would be no solar industry. There would be no wind industry without government promoting it in some fashion.
Fossil fuel industry as we know it.
Well, for that matter as well. But is it top-down control when we build roads that promote more cars? Is it totalitarian when we introduce more public transport? Is it top-down control when we begin to subsidize corn and to make food cheaper and to promote factory farming? In the process of doing that, corn becomes feed for these animals. I mean, this is just absolute sheer. I just don't even know. I don't even know where to begin with this. And the idea, I mean, it's one thing I say, well, if government doesn't get involved in anything, no subsidies for the fossil fuels and also no subsidies for solar, that solar is going to win out. What? This is just bizarreness. This is not left. There's nothing remotely. This is neoliberalism.
Yeah, it is free markets. I mean, it says it right there. He's not really even hiding it. And this is after he defended cryptocurrency and said everyone's making too much of the fact that these things use more energy than a lot of nations.
I'm just honestly, I mean, this is someone that I worked with for the years. I'm just absolutely like, I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention. I don't know. I'm absolutely shocked by this. Yeah. I'm shocked.
Ken Klippenstein, RFK Jr., this is from 1038 this morning. RFK Jr. owns 6 figures worth of Bitcoin per his June 30th financial disclosures.
6 figures worth of Bitcoin? That's a lot of Bitcoin.
That's a lot of useless crap.
Not if you convince people that it should be.
Not if you can flip it for fiat.
I'm really. I found that really that I don't even know what to make of that ad. I mean,
yeah,
I really.
Drift.
I guess it's just we'll have to wait and see. I guess maybe we won't hear about wokeness from him until this time next year. However, here is Governor Ron DeSantis. Now the latest is that they're looking. We're reading stories about changing his campaign leadership. from Jump Street, this guy was looking pretty anemic. It has gotten worse. And I think, Matt, you mentioned this a little bit. You spoke about this on Left Reckoning, that his whole sort of like fundamental campaign that he was running has been built upon, like, it turns out to be like his ideological campaign has been basically just built on a house of sand.
Yeah.
Here's Jake Tapper asking DeSantis to respond from a CNN survey where people felt like wokeness was not the thing that DeSantis thinks it is.
We did this survey. I'll give you a copy of it if you want. They haven't released it, but I got my hands on a copy. And it surveyed people, I think 16 to 28 barriers to service, and beyond the ones such as don't want to die, don't want to be injured, don't want to be away from my family. The biggest issues were the number 2 issue: women and racial or ethnic minorities are discriminated against in the Army. Wokeness is listed here, but it's only number 9. So that would suggest that wokeness is not as big.
Well, but I think there's an issue about, like, not everyone really knows what wokeness is. I mean, I've defined it, but a lot of people who rail against wokeness can't even define it. And so I think it's a sense of, this is not something that's holding true to the core martial values that make the military unique. And I can tell you, the veterans, you don't have to look far and wide. Go to a VFW hall, go to an American Legion. There's huge amount of concern about the direction that the military is going with all this. And here's the thing, things like DEI and all that stuff, it hasn't worked in other aspects of society. It very well may be on the constitutional chopping block in light of the Supreme Court's decision on racial discrimination in higher education. And so it's not a model that I think is going to be successful in the military. And so we're going to do what has been successful in the past, and I think you're going to see better recruiting as a result.
So the Pentagon says that they do try to achieve diversity in recruiting, but not when it comes to promotions. That's all merit-based.
Well, I mean, I think that we have seen standards watered down in different situations. I think that that's probably not accurate. Obviously, they're going to say they're doing a good job. I mean, we get that. That's going to be their thing, but I don't think that that's in tune with reality.
So let's turn to foreign policy, because obviously that goes hand in hand with military policy in many ways. As a congressman in 2015,
who does that appeal to? I mean, honestly, it's like he's not convincing anybody to his left, which is a lot of people in this country. But even like, he's not even defending. It's so mealy-mouthed about the whole thing. Well, I'm not going to. Of course, they say they're doing a good job. Well, they're literally saying that they don't. They just use it in recruiting. In fact, the Supreme Court just said the one place you can use affirmative action is in terms of recruitment for the military and for military academies. It's fascinating to watch this implode, like wherever he goes, regardless of what the outlet is.
Yeah, it's so online. Like, it's like, okay, I can be some kind of anti-imperialist now by having criticisms of the military, and the criticisms are that, like, black people have been too promoted, basically. Like what's the audience for that besides, like, like a bunch of people with Twitter feeds that are in Elon Musk's replies all the time are gonna be like, yeah, very based, sir.
Ron DeSantis is really sort of fascinatingly caught in an internet bubble, I think.
Yeah. And like, here's like Yair Rosenberg, who's a staff writer with The Atlantic. Like, I think he's like a DeSantis guy, but this, which I just think is delusional of like the DeSantis, that this is before that interview. I think there's more riding on the DeSantis Tapper interview today than many realize. A big part of DeSantis' pitch is electability, but he's undermined that with his extreme positioning. Not beclowning himself like Trump under media scrutiny could help him claw back some cred. And like Kelsey Atherton said, the absolute ceiling of what DeSantis could hope for in the interview is that it produces clips occupying 1/20th of the social media space of him saying "me hungry" at a restaurant. His policies are horrendous, but his fall in the polls aligns with people discovering his zero charisma.
Also, I read in either Political Playbook or Punchbowl, one of like the trades, obviously, that apparently the indictment or target letter news came on during this and interrupted this interview. Like, on CNN. Like, it was like, it was at 4 p.m. yesterday. Like, it wasn't even a primetime slot. Like,
do we have that clip?
I'll see if I can find the interruption. It's just like there's no appetite even for people on CNN to watch this.
Yeah, they're ready to close the book on it. It's
Not
like when you like committed yourself to a novel and you're like 2/3 through and you're like, God, do I have to finish this?
Exactly. I mean, it's possible DeSantis drops out even before the first primary.
What's he gonna do then? Face the rest of his life as not being a governor of Florida anymore?
Work the Heritage Foundation, get some sinecure.
Lobbyist.
Speaking of ads, this is pretty funny. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I saw this clip over the weekend. I think it was Sunday night. I must have seen it. And all I could think of was like, from your mouth to God's ears. If only it were true. But this is amazing. And it's pretty funny the way the Biden administration followed up on this. Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene at Turning Points USA conference. This is the same one that Trump was at. And then, wow, he came home and he found out that he had 4 days to report to a grand jury. But here's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Lyndon B. Johnson is very similar to Joe Biden. How are they the same? They're both Democrat socialist. Lyndon B. Johnson.
Pause it for 1 second. I mean, do you remember the clip where she was asked about Glass-Steagall?
Yes, and she said,
Glass-Steagall, and
I was born in 1974. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. And just, for those people who are not Congress people, and not one of the most powerful Republican lawmakers in the country, Glass-Steagall was a bill that was adopted, written into law in the wake of the Great Depression, that basically separated commercial banks, like where you go and you have your checking account, from investment banks. Because when they're combined, the investment part of the bank starts using the commercial funds. And when they take a big loss, a systemic economy-wide loss, a lot of people are left like, wait, where's my money? We also got the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation in the wake of that. And under the Clinton administration, that was repealed. And then, of course, 15 years later, we get the 2008 financial crisis. She was asked a question about it, had no idea about it. My point in bringing that up is when she is reading this stuff about Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden, I have little doubt that she, A, knows what even she's talking about as she reads it, or B, had heard any of this stuff, if she said this on Sunday, by Saturday. She hadn't heard, like Lyndon B. Johnson, that was before she was born, doesn't need to know it. Go ahead.
Lyndon B. Johnson is very similar to Joe Biden. How are they the same? They're both Democrat socialist. Lyndon B. Johnson was the majority leader in the Senate. Does that sound familiar? He was vice president to Kennedy.
Like I say, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Joe Biden was never the majority leader in the Senate. He was a senator.
The Senate
Does that sound
familiar?
Does the Senate sound familiar?
The Senate, ever heard of it?
This is so funny. She goes off script. Just even like a slightly, has no idea what she's talking about. Really fascinating how sort of disastrous this country is. That someone like this could have the power that she has. But it's just like the most basic of. She didn't even know the history of who she hates. Go back.
Lyndon B. Johnson is very similar to Joe Biden. How are they the same? They're both Democrat socialist. Lyndon B. Johnson was the majority leader in the Senate. Does that sound familiar? He was vice president to Kennedy. Joe was vice president to Obama.
Wow.
He was appointed as the president after JFK was assassinated. Then he was elected. His big socialist programs were the Great Society. The Great Society were big government programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation,
Things the government deals
Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and welfare, the Office of Economic Opportunity, and big labor and labor unions. Now, LBJ had the Great Society, but
Pause
Joe
it. Wait a second. The
Biden-
Great Society was about big labor and big unions? They just threw that in there for...
Yeah.
They just threw that in there.
I feel like this kind of history lesson, like not only of course does it offend us, but like even like the average Glenn Beck listeners can be like, yeah, this is pretty remedial and not exactly accurate.
Super remedial. And I just love the fact that she lists off like education,
transportation,
healthcare,
like
Medicare. Like
you know,
it's like
you know who also dealt with transportation is like Eisenhower.
Actually trains. Like I mean, like we can go back. You can keep going back and back. But go ahead.
Medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation,
states,
Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and welfare, the Office of Economic Opportunity, and big labor and labor unions. Now, LBJ had the Great Society, but Joe Biden had Build Back Better, and he still is working on it. The largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete. Socialism. Meanwhile, we are now $32 trillion in debt. With record high homelessness, 40-year record inflation, we're losing the US dollar as the #1 world currency. We're losing our freedoms. Our government is one big fat bloated machine. And it's killing.
I mean, the even on their own terms. I mean, this is so dumb.
Yeah.
Joe.
FDR, man.
FDR was a socialist. That's their line that they're talking about. You don't want to deal with the rural poverty or bring electricity to people in the country, I guess.
I mean, socialists definitely influenced the New Deal sort of program and with that radicalism. But I think if you look back at the FDR era, what it did was basically give capitalism a new lease on life after it was thoroughly discredited.
Completely let the air out of the tire moment. But honestly, if you're Joe Biden, the idea that you are part of the lineage of FDR, LBJ is, I got to be something that I would imagine something that you are, excited to be considered in that sort of a pantheon, as it were. And arguably, if Build Back Better had been the sort of the original version, there would be an argument, I think, but it failed. LBJ may have been, he was a former Senate leader. Does that sound familiar? I mean, can you imagine what Joe Biden must be thinking of this? Well, imagine no more. Here it is.
Joe Biden had the largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete. Programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, labor unions. And he still is working on it.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
If only.
I wish.
If only. It is amazing. I think like a real sign of the, just how polarized. And the thing that I appreciate about this moment in our politics is that it is so glaringly obvious that this is not just a question of we all agree on the problems. How do we get to a solution? Which was, I don't know if it was ever the case, but certainly in my lifetime growing up, we were told by the media that that's what the case was. We all agree on the problems. The question is, how do we go about it? And the fact is, no, we don't all agree with the problems. If you don't want to do anything about rural poverty, you don't think it's a problem. If you don't want to do anything about child poverty, you don't think it's a problem. If you don't want to do anything about, falling wages, you don't consider it a problem. I could go on and on. Healthcare. If you've got an issue with this is amazing. I would love to see the Republican Party run on an anti-Medicare platform. It's fascinating. It really
run
is.
Against FDR.
Exactly.
probably not like historically who you want as an opponent if you're a Republican.
You gotta hand it whoever is doing those ads for Joe Biden. That's couldn't have exploited that more or in a better way. Let's go. I got to call into the phones here. I am calling into the phones. There we go. And Gay Jezen says Biden needs a better PR person. I mean, she's saying the right things, but her delivery is pretty meh. The phone lines are up 646-257-3920. Jennifer from St. Louis on the IMs. Oh Lord, for a minute I thought we were going to have to Rudy Giuliani sing. Sam, are you feeling okay? You sound a little low energy yesterday and today. Not a criticism, just a concern.
Oh.
I think I'm tired. I'm tired. Little sleep issues. That's all right. Getting ready for the kid to go to college. That gets. Are we in? Calling in. Bear with me, folks. There we go. Let's go right to the phones. Calling from a 919 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going? This is Todd from Raleigh.
Todd from Raleigh. What's on your mind, Todd?
So when the Unabomber died a month ago, I didn't shed any tears, but I noticed a lot of libertarians online and libertarians in my social life were mourning him. I found that really curious because he always had like a pro-environmental, anti-consumerist message. It was incoherent because he also went against, leftism. But I wanted to see what your take, your and Matt's take on what is the appeal of the Unabomber to libertarians and conservatives when a lot of his, albeit incoherent manifesto, flies in the face of their core beliefs.
It's a good question. We'll answer it offline. Appreciate the call. I can't imagine it's anything more than an aesthetic, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and the rejecting leftism thing. I mean, I've never got big into Kaczynski's kind of before my time, and I understand people find like his like manifesto or whatever like interesting. It's like I don't know, like a lot of people criticize society, but like
I suspect it's because on some level he had sort of seceded from society and lived, theoretically outside the bounds of like our society. Of course, though, he did use the U.S. Postal Service and in his killing of people.
Right.
But they'll ignore that. But I imagine it's like somewhere between like an aesthetic and the idea that he lived outside of society. I think many libertarians fashion themselves as some type of like outlaws and want to live in some, if it can't be a garbage scow 7 miles out when they're outside of like the reach of the Coast Guard, this is the next best thing. I don't know. Kid tested, Paul Bureau proved. You do look pretty terrible too, Sam. Just concerned about your rapid deterioration. Jeez.
Man.
Well, rough crowd today. Calling from a 256 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Jacob from Alabama.
Jacob from Alabama.
Jacob.
This is the
Valley
one of
Labor
the
Reports,
co-hosts
Jacob.
of the Valley Labor Report.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for that. I was calling to see if y'all. I know that y'all been talking some about some of the redistricting stuff and some of the cases, and you mentioned Alabama a couple of weeks ago. So I figured there's something happened a couple of days ago or yesterday. and then talk about how, the Alabama Democratic Party might miss their chance, to put it mildly.
All right. I headlined this yesterday. The Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago had basically ruled that Alabama's maps were unconstitutional, or I should say illegal under the Voting Rights Act, which calls for, depending on the population, certain number of minority majority districts, black majority districts. They found that Alabama's last map should include another majority black district, that it was sort of like unconstitutionally gerrymandered, or I should say maybe illegally gerrymandered. And the thing I read yesterday basically said the Republican Party was just going to try and ignore the Supreme Court. What do you got, Jacob?
Yeah, well, and I do think that the language in the ruling was a little bit more ambiguous. It said that Alabama's population warrants either a second minority majority district or something quite close to it. And the Alabama Republicans are really running with this. Are two maps that have been decided on, one by the House and one by the Senate. One of them has the black population, and the second quite close to it district at only 42%, and the other one has it at 46%. That is better than one of the maps that was proposed that had all 7 districts only containing 10 to 20% black folks. So, it's a little bit better than that. But so they're really trying to use that kind of second half of that phrase and see how close to the line that they can get it. But, with a 43% black population, I don't know if that's enough of an opportunity for, the black population to elect a candidate of their choosing. They're just really seeing how little that they can give them, basically.
And how are the Democrats responding, in which you think they're missing an opportunity?
Well, the Democrats are, they voted against, both in the House and the Senate, along party lines. They voted against these maps, and, they're coming out against it. They're saying that, the VRA is going to require more, that these maps are probably going to be shot down. But, generally, and so I don't know that that's probably the right response, but as far as if they do get a second district where they have the opportunity to compete, I'm worried about them fumbling and losing that to a Republican, and potentially even losing the 7th district as well, if they only have a population of 51% black in that district, because the party is just so dysfunctional. I don't know if y'all had heard about this, but recently an old guard that was ousted in 2019, I think it was, 2018, 2019, they were reelected to party leadership on some really shaky grounds. They claimed that they won the election, but photos from the election where the votes were counted by just people standing up, showed that they did not have the most votes of the two parties, in fact. But they claimed that they did, and they refused to take a roll call vote. And so they assumed power, and the secretary, the parliamentarian, did not, stop it. And so there are complaints with the DNC right now that they're considering. They've even considered pulling the party's charter. But after that old guard took over the party, they kicked out all of the DNC mandated minority caucuses, including the LGBT caucus, the youth caucus, the Hispanic caucus, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, everything except the Black caucus. And they gave themselves the authority to appoint minorities in those categories to committees. And so these communities are not going to be able to appoint their own representation. It's going to be the leadership of the party handpicking who is going to be in these committees, not caucuses. And it's really, it's people are really upset about it. I think obviously for obvious reasons, and particularly, the LGBT community, after the club's huge shooting, this group of people in the party sent out a letter, an email to all of their members saying, this is senseless violence and we need to stand against this, their lifestyles notwithstanding. So, this is just really kind of crazy stuff. And I've had conversations with some people who have been in the party for a long time and that are really kind of dedicated to the Democratic Party and apparatus in a way that I'm not. And they're considering reaching out to the Working Families Party right now and just trying to go around the Democrats because it's just so much of a terrible. It's just terrible. And they do not invest in candidates. They do absolutely nothing, to get people elected. It's just really a crap show. And, so I'm trying to encourage them to reach out to the Working Families Party and maybe they'll be a little bit more effective. But it is, genuinely, it's worrying.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Appreciate the update. Yeah. It would be interesting if the Working Families Party, sort of was to become a home for a lot of those sort of even institutional Democrats. Appreciate the call, Jacob.
I think so. Am I still on?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to plug one more thing before I left. The guy who does our videos and graphics, he does he does that freelance, and he just lost his second source of income. So he's very much open to jobs. So if anybody has any visuals or graphics or video editing, anything like that, audio editing that they want done, I think he's really great. And you can go on our website tvlr.fm/contact and send us an inquiry, and we can get you connected to it.
Have them get into the Discord too, and post that link there in the Discord.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, appreciate it, folks. If you know anybody who's looking for those type of services, you can help out the Valley Labor Report by helping out their video person. Calling from a 307 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. I'm David from Wyoming.
David from Wyoming. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm an international student. I'm in the econ department. I was reading. I'm a big fan of the show, by the way.
Okay.
I was reading this news that I live in Laramie, and Cheyenne is the closest city for me in Wyoming. And there was this news this week that the council passed this law to remove and house people from that they are living close to a creek.
Oy.
For me, it's crazy to think that the solution is instead the council can pass a resolution to just find them, because the resolution is not even police could arrest them, but they are not gonna do that. So the only thing that will happen is they are gonna get a $1,000 fine. We're talking about unhoused people. It's just, I don't understand why use public resources to just do this, kind of charades. And it sucks. I feel like this is where capitalism sucks for everyone, because I understand that for people living there, the only thing that they have, there's no social net here in Wyoming. So the only thing they have is their properties. So it's kind of, it's horrible because they feel the need to remove these people instead of passing a law to increase the budget to all the homeless associations that work with the associations for homeless people that work in Cheyenne. So I just wanted to bring a little bit of light on this. If people can donate, that would be nice.
Appreciate the call. Yeah, our complete the hostility towards unhoused people in this country is just sort of seems to be growing exponentially. Sort of the flip side of that is the desire to actually help and address the issue seems to be just near non-existent, at least in the context of, some of these places. Appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Calling from an 805 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Vic. I'm calling from Ventura, California.
Vic from Ventura. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so I've been working in transportation for a good part of a decade, and I kind of wanted to talk about some of these dash cams, especially in Amazon vehicles and stuff like that. All of my transportation experience has been in passenger transportation, but we've utilized these camera systems. And most of my career, I'm a general manager now. Most of my career, I've been a safety manager, and I've seen the value in these systems and how they promote safety. However, I believe it also takes an ethical manager to not abuse that privilege. And I think what we're seeing with some of the Amazon stuff is that abuse. There was a Vice article I was reading, and they were talking about one of the systems. I have a little bit of experience with it. They're typically event-based systems. So if something triggers it, that's when the company would take action. However, for like an Amazon, they've automated that process. So instead of having like a manager that's like monitoring each individual event, they're just sending violations to employees and they can dispute them. There's other things that they're going on about, like I was watching a video of a driver who said, like, well, because of the distracted driving and the AI technology and it's watching me, I have to pull over to take a drink, because if I take a drink, it shows distracted driving and they send me a violation. My question is, how do we draw that distinction? Because in my experience, not going overboard and not cracking down like on every little nitpicking item like an Amazon does, I've seen the benefits of using it as a coaching tool rather than a disciplinary tool, and how it promotes safety and reduces accidents, improves safe drivers. But at what point do we say we've given up too many of our liberties to promote safety? How do we draw a line? Like, what can be done to make sure that these companies aren't abusing this technology the way that they appear to be are? Or
I'll just stipulate that there's a value to it if you say so. But it would not be hard for OSHA or for I would imagine it would be OSHA, but it could also be like the Labor Department to say these cameras can only be used in the course of promoting safety in this specific way, for training purposes. These cameras cannot be used as a disciplinary device. These cameras cannot be used in, it seems to me that it's within the purview of our government to say, like, you can't, be putting, you can't be tracking your employees this way. They're not robots. They're human beings. It may make it more efficient, but that doesn't mean that we're going to allow it. It may make you more money, but that doesn't mean we're going to allow it.
And I definitely agree with you. I think that, for an Amazon, is their goal to have safer drivers, or is their goal to squeeze every little bit of productivity out of their employees? And absolutely, I think an Amazon
easiest
they're
question
trying to make money.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I've come from. Whereas being a safety manager most of my career, that's never been my goal. I've never worked in operations. Well, I do now, but at the time, I was not working operations. And as I mentioned, we utilize these like as a coaching tool. Like, hey, let me show you, where if you brake late and the event triggered. That's typically what it is. Yes, you can request footage, but they're not typically live cameras. Let's say you brake late. It's like, well, some of those inward-facing cameras, which is where I think the bigger concern is, rather than the outward-facing cameras, is I can, from a safety standpoint, say, well, like, okay, well, I looked like you were a little distracted here, or you didn't notice the light, or this is how long it took you to observe that before you started braking. And you can definitely have a coaching mechanism to it. And
sure.
I think that was
I buy
where
that.
does that coaching mechanism and that
it's easy
violation of privacy come into play?
Yeah. 2F by Fire writes on the IM, as a former transportation supervisor, my company used it to lower the liability cost, the accident record. So appreciate the call. I mean, I think there's an opportunity for, regulation that would basically say you can't use it in the way of surveilling or trying to punish workers. it's a disciplinary device.
Yeah, I mean, this is why understanding the Luddite sort of objection to technology as not just, we don't like new things, you're confusing us with this newfangledness. It's what the technology is being used for, and back then it was to put them out of work.
Yep.
But as long as like capitalists control the world, which they've done for hundreds of years now, like this sort of technology is going to be deployed in ways that serves their ends, despite the sort of marketing or promise as the way it's marketed to people.
Folks, the right is so interested in policy and whatnot, and if it's not Dr. Seuss books that they don't have access to. What's so strange about the conservative movement is their obsession with kids' entertainment. And, I guess, I guess you could say like, hey, is this appropriate? Like, should this be available to kids under the age of 7? Or should this be available, or I don't know, should we be putting stuff on TV that is just trying to sell them, garbage or something like that? I mean, I can understand that, but this obsession with like kid stuff is really weird. And I don't know if Ben Shapiro just does this because he has to, or if they think that they're on some type of like mission, a cultural mission, like Dr. Seuss, and they got so mad about Ghostbusters, and like, it's very strange. At the end of the day, we all know what this is about. It's an opportunity to complain that wokeism is gone amok. And what does that mean? It means that like white people are being oppressed. And what does that mean? It means that black people, brown people, and when I say white people, they're usually talking about white men, women are oppressing us and they're getting too many rights. That's how this goes. You just carry it through to its natural progression. Here is Ben Shapiro, when he is not policing the Jewishness of other people, he's now policing the casting choices of kids' movies.
So they've now decided that apparently every redhead in the Disney universe will be recast as a racially diverse person. And this is how, for example, The Little Mermaid ended up as a person of color. It's something that somebody noticed. It's basically, if you're a redhead in Disney universe, then they'll recast you. But now they're recasting everyone. So they've cast Snow White. Snow White is now going to be played by Rachel Zegler. Okay, now Rachel Zegler, you may know, again, her name is Snow White. Now, you might consider that racist, but that's also the name of the actual fairy tale. And in the actual fairy tale, it says skin, I mean, this is from the original 1936 Snow White. Skin as white as snow, right? That is literally in her name. That's why she has her name.
Pause it for a second. Oh, no. Keep the picture of Ben Shapiro on there. Ben, of course, is Pope of the Jews. Maybe this is a bad example. Bradley, would you describe Ben Shapiro's skin as white as snow? Do you have a picture of snow? Can we put that up there? Can we put up a picture of snow? Do we have that?
We're forgetting one.
Yeah. Focus in on that snow. One of those pictures. Focus in on one. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Go zoom in. Let's say I just want to just do a color, a color comparison between Snow White and see. I'm certainly not Snow White. I don't think there's anybody in the office. Ben Shapiro. I just wanted to just note that. And also note that what we're talking about is a kids movie for children.
Yeah. And I mean, to be explicit, like the actress that he's not being explicit enough, because like his real objection, you can't tell by her last name that she's not just a white woman. She's apparently half Polish, of half Polish descent and half Colombian descent. My guess would be that Colombian was not the indigenous to Colombia.
Do we have a picture of her? Because I have no idea who this is.
Let's pull up a picture.
I mean, I had not even heard of this controversy about the casting decisions of
while Bradley's pulling that up, I mean, I think this is an interesting point of like, how do they program their shows and like what they decide to talk about? Because Ben Shapiro, we know he wanted to be in Hollywood. Now is actually a good opportunity to do some Hollywood criticism because there's a massive labor actions going on. Ben Shapiro doesn't want to criticize Hollywood on those fronts. He would rather criticize it as like being too anti-white. Here's the
is this he's attacking?
That's her. Apparently she's not white enough to be Snow White.
I mean,
and to be clear, like Snow White, like the original like fairy tale, it's because she's like comes from the actual snow. It's not that she's like from Sweden or something like that.
This is so stupid, and I know, like, I think the proper reaction that people should have to us talking about this is like, why are you talking about this?
Yep.
But it is important, I think, for us to sort of just weigh in on the ongoing culture war that they fight, that ostensibly is about culture, but it really, at the end of the day, it's a twofer, right? They believe that politics are downstream from culture, and presumably the vast majority of the cultural issues that they deal with have to do with some offense to whiteness. Here's Ben Shapiro. Continue.
Cast you, but now they're recasting everyone. So they've cast Snow White. Snow White is now going to be played by Rachel Zegler. Okay, now Rachel Zegler, you may know, again, her name is Snow White. Now you might consider that racist, but that's also the name of the actual fairy tale. And in the actual fairy tale, it says skin, I mean, this is from the original 1936 Snow White. Skin as white as snow, right? That is literally in her name. That's why she has her name. So I guess just to like
human
screw
beings
people,
don't have
they're
skin
casting
white as snow unless they've been wrapped in a Band-Aid. Continue.
Right.
Snow White, skin as white as snow, right? That is literally in her name. That's why she has her name. So I guess just to like screw with people, they're casting Rachel Zegler is a very talented person. I'm just it's weird casting, you might say, right? Like I don't understand. There's certain parts that are racially specific. I mean, very clearly so. Right? They're not going to cast Tiana.
But snow is not a race. It's not actually a race.
Snow is not a race. Nobody is that white. And she's I just like Google it. She's like the hottest musical, like a musical film, one of the hottest musical film actresses. She was in West Side Story.
Oh, sure. I don't know, but yeah.
Is that right?
I guess. What is it? Was she in West Side Story? I don't.
Yeah, she was. She was. She was Maria in the West Side Story movie.
Yeah, like she was just the lead in like this really huge. That's the thing.
Steven
That
Spielberg
Hollywood
production.
Hollywood doesn't go after like the things that are going to make them money. They don't do that.
Person, I'm just. It's weird casting, you might say, right? Like I don't understand. There's certain parts that are racially specific. I mean, very clearly so. Right? They're not going to cast Tiana from the Frog Prince, the princess, whatever it is. They're not going to recast Tiana as a white lady. They're not going to, even though you certainly could, but they're not going to. And we all know why, of course. Well, Snow White is like maybe the only racially specific white princess because it's in the name. And it's not like greatly evil if a person is cast as what the part is. It's very strange to me that if you cast Alexander Hamilton as a black person, that's totally fine. But if you cast Martin Luther King as a white person, that is totally unacceptable. Maybe you should cast people as like what the description.
But it doesn't say like her skin was white like a Northern European. It was her skin is white like snow.
Well, also, this is a fictional character. It's a fictional character. And the whole premise of the Alexander Hamilton stage show was a reinterpretation of American history. I mean, it was all part of some type of idea. It's a fictional character, and no one's skin is as white as snow. That doesn't happen. That doesn't exist. Well, I guess maybe someone had albinoism. I guess
that's
maybe.
The thing is like she doesn't have dark skin. Maybe she was an albino descendant of Polish and Colombian ancestry. Like I don't know. Like, and also just on the tiara, the Princess and the Frog or whatever the hell, that was based on Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah, and I should also say I'm a grown man, so I don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
And I do have kids. Let me just say this. Snake Balloon says, does Ben also think Barry White was a white guy? God. God. Is that it?
Oh, we can go.
Let's just see where he's going with this.
It's very strange to me that if you cast Alexander Hamilton as a black person, that's totally fine. But if you cast Martin Luther King as a white person, that is totally unacceptable. Maybe you should cast people as like what the description of the part is. There are certain parts where the person is described as white. And that's okay. That's not like the end of the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that they do this because they tried to do this with a Little Mermaid, and actually, if you look at that description from Hans Christian Andersen, it's a lot more ambiguous. I mean, not a lot more ambiguous. This is still not making the point they say.
It's like, a sea creature.
Right.
It's a sea creature. The Little Mermaid's a sea creature. They're not going to look like, they don't look like anything.
Yeah.
Specifically. Oh, you're not being true to a mermaid. What? Your unicorn is not your unicorn doesn't have the right dimensions. What? These are all fantastical things. It's amazing. The ability to find a complaint. But I guess that's the idea. It is, you need to come up with some type of like offense that's taking place to white people. And I don't mean the whites, like, with their last name. Matthew, Atlanta, DSA. The city of Atlanta is obviously scared now that the paid canvassing seems to be a game changer. Everywhere you go, there are people collecting signatures. The tide has turned and the referendum movement has momentum. Their attempts to avert and undermine democracy will not work. We will get the signatures and we'll see them in court. Cop City will never be built. The question then becomes, how do we as socialists harness the momentum built up in this left coalition in such a red state? We're building a foundation and laying groundwork for a better South. That's great.
Wow.
I hope you're right. The city is moving now. They're like a two-pronged attack. They're going to attack the referendum process as being illegit, and then they're just going to argue that not just the mechanisms that are being used to bring about this referendum, but the referendum itself is not binding. That's what's going on here. The lengths in which they'll go to be anti-democratic, and I mean that small d, is astonishing. What's going on in Cop City? I mean, between the cops themselves and what they've been doing to the protesters and how they are now sort of building a case that they can just blatantly ignore the will of the people as expressed through a referendum. Mutts Butts. Yes, Snow White is a fictional character, but you seem to forget it is also a fairy tale. Ben is still pissed he wasn't cast as Shylock in his school rendition of The Merchant of Venice. There's an actual critique of the new Snow White movie in that Disney isn't hiring actual little people to play the seven dwarfs, but let's go after the woman of color actress. They're not playing little people to play the dwarfs?
I wonder if they're just either like CGI or green screening or whatever the case may be, VFXing them, I guess.
Right.
It's so... Disney sucks anyways. All these these fairy tales are horrible. I outlaw every single fairy tale that is about, a woman, needing to have a prince come and save her life.
Well,
that's my agenda.
Some of us are Prince Charmings and some of us aren't, so I can see why you don't like it.
Bumbler, can I get a shofar for my friend Kay? She was attacked some weeks ago while teaching gender studies and philosophy. Despite this terrible event, she's incredibly accomplished and deserves a shout out because I'm proud of her. I'm really sorry to hear that, Kay. Kay, this is for you. Manas, note that Gen Z wonder kid Frost, labeled as a progressive, voted yes in support of Israel. I didn't realize how much he supported Palestine during his campaign, but he has had the most lived up heel turn of the century. Come up, Link. Happy friend. I mean, I got to imagine it's quite possible in Florida that there's a big constituency that would punish him electorally. I'm not saying that is a reason to vote the way he did, but certainly I would imagine is part of his thinking if that's the case.
Kazar's got to do better though in Texas.
Happy Friends Day. Well, the Christian Zionists in Texas,
fair enough,
is a more adamant pro-Israel constituency than broadly Jewish people are.
Right.
Tomo Flink, Happy Friends Day Wednesday, folks. Regarding European military spending, there have been long plans for the EU to take on a more NATO-like dimension through the European Defense Union. When EU members pool their militaries, it produces a military roughly the same size as the U.S. military. But whenever Europe tries to implement this plan, the U.S. whines so hard that Europe ends up canceling the idea. It's almost as if whenever the U.S. officials say Europe needs to spend more on defense, they really mean Europe needs to line the pockets of the defense contractors whose CEOs donated to our campaign. Well, I would also argue it's a question of control.
Right.
And why don't corporations want Medicare for all? Maybe they're worried about the increase in taxes they'll have to pay. But I would imagine for a lot of corporations, it would be a wash at worst if you offloaded these costs. But they want control over their workers. I would imagine it's a similar dynamic.
And that part I think it's kind of like the defund thing where it doesn't emphasize what's replacing it enough and people get freaked out. Like the NATO thing, when we had Wertham on, like, you know, before Russian invasion, basically saying, yeah, Europe needs to do this themselves. And then you don't have the alliance, which, like, I think people do need to historicize as more problematic than the mythological version of NATO that we get. And like a European defense where we aren't calling the shots is just preferable.
Also, Sam, remember when both you and Emma were out when the Queen died? I'm just asking questions. Thank you for your service, comrades. Noah from Tampa, can you read this IM out loud at 2:30? I'm going to be telling my sister the full story of the past year, and I just want some evidence so she doesn't think I'm crazy. Okay, I did. Nurse. Washington nurse from Palliap again. I should say something surprising about the strike vote experience. Good news from Palliap Washington State Nurses Union, WSNA. Earlier this month, we voted 95% to strike, and the multi-care hospital caved to our demands the night before the strike was to begin. Oh, that's excellent. I should say something surprising about the strike vote experience was that many of the nurses who were supportive of the union were also very Republican. I mean, I think that it is very well established that unionization not only increases your pay and your working conditions and makes them better. It also increases the pay and the working conditions of everybody in the industry. And then on top of that, and I think Mila, our guest from Kentuckiana, is that what it is? From basically from Louisville in Indiana, made this point, Mila Wade, that when you start to unionize, you start like realizing that there's a certain amount of solidarity that goes beyond the issues you're dealing with directly at hand. And so there's a lot of talking about building, sort of a strong working class political voice and power. Union drives, strikes, etc., very healthy for our democracy. New Jersey State, Jim Brewer recorded a podcast on my cousin's boat yesterday. The episode was anti-wind, as my cousin put it. They're against the offshore wind firms in New Jersey. My cousin constantly wants to debate me on how bad the windmills are. I work for the New Jersey DEP, so he knows where I stand on the issue. Well, why are they considered so bad? Because they look so bad and they're supposedly going to kill birds? Is that it?
Yeah, it's always interesting to like kind of get into this because people now I hear they're not great for marine life or something like that, and it's like, okay, well, let's all like now that we care about this stuff, let's worry about like how we're boiling the oceans and stuff too. Let's take a holistic approach as opposed to just saying no.
Are we going to get rid of all the oil rigs?
Right, like the windmills thing. I hear this in North Dakota all the time. People who were like supportive of running pipelines through the country, and then being really upset that they have to drive down I-94 and see some windmills.
I think when I see big windmills like that, and when I see big like solar farms, I just think they're incredibly cool.
I agree. And with like dams and stuff, like big civil engineering, it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I could see if I lived across the street from a solar farm that wasn't there when I bought the house, I'd be a little bit bummed. Have to like grow a couple of trees or something like that. But this is a sign, like this is a hopeful sign. JR and Philly, Sam, the next big group to organize knowledge workers. Abby Normal, dude, a place unfit for living is uninhabitable, not inhabitable. When did I say inhabitable? I meant uninhabitable. I certainly know this. International Socialists. Sam, you anthead, ask your guest about Insect Crisis, the book he wrote. I did. Sam, recall the Unabomber was very bright. Harvard from age 15, got experimented on under MK Ultra with LSD electroshock, strangely became very antisocial and exhibited extreme human damage syndrome. I don't know if I knew that he was part of that. Maybe I did know that.
I feel like that might be in that Chaos book about the I'm not
I think I did know that. Old Testament Ivanka Trump. Hello, MR crew and Sam. I've been listening since the last primaries and just got the chance to become a member. So here's my money. Thank you for helping me understand how to read between the lines with the current Greek government because the Reagan era is alive and well here. Is it possible to ask the crew to wish my friend Flora a happy birthday? I've been sending them videos from the show and they've been getting increasingly more interested in politics because of You Left Is Best. Well, Flora, happy birthday. All right, we'll take one more phone call. Well, maybe two, but we'll see. Calling from a 309 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Kai from Central Illinois. Is this me?
Kai from Central Illinois. What's on your mind?
I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but it kind of plays into yesterday's conversation about antitrust, the Kroger and Albertsons merger.
Yeah, okay. We haven't talked about that actually in a while.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you guys covered it at all. I didn't know what your guys' thoughts were. Kroger is the third largest grocer and Albertsons is the fourth, and they're both combining to become the second. After, of course, Walmart. I mean, and it doesn't look like they had a Senate committee hearing back in November, and it largely went off without them making much hay about it. I just didn't know what you guys thought.
I to be honest with you, I have not dug into it that much. But it'll be interesting to see if the FTC makes any type of move in that regard. I'd be surprised if they didn't. I don't know what the consolidation of those two markets would be, how that would be beneficial to sort of the principles that we're seeing. The Biden administration came out with new rules. I have that in front of me at the moment about some new here it is. They just came out with new merger rules, actually, literally this past week. And they today they released this draft updates to the merger guidelines. I don't know how that will affect it, but they just came out with new merger guidelines today, and I've yet to really sort of go through it. But the proposal reflects how evolutions in technology, markets, and business practice can bring different threats to competition. I would suspect that, when we've seen like Lena Khan look for statutory expansion of our antitrust laws to deal with like things, particularly that are more like digital. But I'll check this out. I have a feeling that the Federal Trade Commission is not done with that merger as of yet, but we'll see. I'll look into it.
Yeah, it's supposed to go off at the beginning of next year, and I actually work at Kroger. I'm a union member, and our national union has come out against it. Obviously, campaigning like hard, like hell, trying to get it stopped. But my local union, on the other hand, has not. So
weird.
There's a little bit of a divide. Well, it's a regional thing. My local union's kind of hurting for people, and they say it'll be an influx of people
right.
and dues for money and BS. But yeah.
Appreciate the call. I mean, that's one of the challenges with unions. And broadly speaking, sometimes like institutional material interests will outweigh broader, more movement interests. Jibber jabber. Unabomber was not an MK Ultra subject. He was the subject of a psychology experiment where he wrote his dumb political opinions on paper and a professor read them out loud to a group to make fun of him. Oh, interesting. All right. Final call of the day. Calling from an 845 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? You are the final caller of the day.
Hello, Sam. Is this me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. This is Jesse James from Orange County.
Jesse James from Orange County?
Yeah, I've called in before. I just wanted to mention, have you guys talked about Ron DeSantis' ban on certain states' driver's licenses?
On certain states' driver's licenses? Is that like stuff basically part of that immigration law?
Yeah, he's basically making it so that any driver's licenses coming from a state that supports undocumented workers is no longer allowed in Florida.
Okay, there are states that provide driver's licenses for undocumented workers. And the reason why you do this is because you don't want them, in the event that they're in an accident, to flee the scene. It's to increase public safety. And right. DeSantis, I didn't realize that was part of the law that they passed down there. I mean, we've talked about like the truckers going on strike. That seems it's going to hurt business and people and supplies lines. And it's going to be difficult that you're not going to allow truckers to come into your state with a different license.
Without a doubt. I just think it's funny how someone, a weenie and a laughingstock like Ron DeSantis can still have so much power to mess things up.
Well, welcome to the United States of America.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to be here. Anyway, that was it. Keep up the great work, guys. Left is based.
Appreciate the call. Thanks, Jesse. All right, folks, that is the call-in portion of the program. Thank you for participating today. Wish we could get to more of those. Let's see. Is there any other clip that we need to get to?
The only one I would even consider is the Candace Owens one, but we've had some Daily Wire today, so I think we're probably fine. Probably fine.
Bro, you said inhabitable 5 times in the last day. The IMR's defense, it sounded like another abstentia or coincentric. Uninhabitable. There's no way I'm saying inhabitable.
Also, I think the context clues, I would be surprised if people were confused.
I might have said not inhabitable. Uninhabitable might be better than saying not inhabitable, but I didn't confuse uninhabitable with inhabitable. This is an outrage. Hey, grifters, new member, longtime listener. Sam, how did you get into growing fruit trees? In the early aughts, moved up to Hudson Valley, and that was the beginning. I think as a kid, though, too, even in Worcester, our backyard, we had some fruit trees. That's that. All right, let's read some more IMs. Then we'll get out of here. Star Fox. Sam, can the Discord get a show for... Oh, I already did that. Chris Burdick. I already did that, too. What's going on here? Custodial artist. Sam, back when you gave RFK some acting tips, you need to tell him yes and was for improv comedy and not a life statement. Trickle down climate change.
Yes, Reverend neoliberalism.
Reverend Wright, why does RFK sound like a guy saying his last ragged words in a war movie? RFK has a degenerative disease in his larynx.
Yeah,
I think something like that. Calvin from Northville. Breaks my heart that people are trained to look at the very real apocalypse that we can stop or mitigate it and view it as an act of God. Fundamentalism and climate denial go hand in hand. These people are far closer to the Antichrist than they would like. The vaccine lockdown, did he mean the COVID lockdowns or the vaccine mandates? Peterson is sundowning hard. They have to conflate a bunch of different things. Yeah. They also have to rewrite history. And they also have to rewrite, what was motivating people. You could have opened up restaurants on April 1st in New York City, and I will tell you exactly how many people would have gone to those restaurants, like maybe 5. Because people had seen firsthand the death that was coming from these things. I mean, it's just so bizarre. The reason why people didn't come rushing back when these places were opened up and there was no, lockdown per se, is because they were afraid of getting COVID, because COVID is deadly. Oh, we mentioned this on, I mentioned this in passing the other day. When we were talking about, and I know I'm probably talking more about RFK than it is warranted, but for me, it's really upsetting, this stuff, because I used to work with the guy, and was friendly, if not friends. It's the stupidity of his comments that I'm finding so upsetting. Like the idea that COVID was not was targeted. Again, the idea that COVID was targeted implies that someone actually created it, but targeted to not impact Chinese people or Ashkenazi Jews or Finnish people. I think he said in his apology, or his whatever, his explanation. But how can you actually, aside from all the gobbledygook associated, whether you can target a pathogen that well enough to take out a group like Ashkenazi Jews or Chinese or, I don't know.
Black people in America.
Or black people in America. The idea that you can target it that well, let's just put that aside. I don't know. Maybe it's possible to do that. I don't know. But the idea that you could assess from existing data that somehow Chinese people were, which, clearly is about implying the Chinese government deployed this.
He prefaced it by talking about how both governments are doing it.
Yeah. This is from the New York Times. just, and I had mentioned this, like, are you really going to trust China's numbers as to as to how many Chinese people died from COVID? Epidemiologists say a rise in cremations in an eastern province is the latest indication that the country's official death toll from COVID is a vast undercount. Official data from China offered a rare but brief glimpse to the true toll of COVID, indicating that nearly as many people may have died from the virus in a single province earlier this year as Beijing has said has died in the mainland during the entire pandemic. The number of cremations in the eastern province of Zhejiang rose to 171,000 in the first quarter of this year, the website said. That was 72,000 more cremations, roughly a 70% increase than had been reported in the same period last year. This is the thing that people forget. China had a complete total lockdown in specific areas, in like millions and millions of people, massive cities. However, at one point, people got sick of it. In January of 2022, when they pulled back on those restrictions, that's when the majority of these deaths apparently occurred. But many people died in December as well. I mean, it's just, how could... There may be studies that show that, like, you know, some people have a genetic predisposition. I don't even know where they resolved it, you know, because the mutations with COVID, you know, is in terms of like blood type. But to attribute this targeting as if there's some entity out there, like what entity would target COVID in a way to not infect Chinese people and not infect Ashkenazi Jews? I mean, you have to ask yourself, if you're going to present this information, maybe you should take the next step and say, like, what is the implication here to this? They were just like, the Chinese government was like, we're gonna obviously protect Chinese people. And then let's just pick some rando group. I don't know, Ashkenazi Jews. Like, if you're going to disseminate this information on the context of a campaign trail, regardless of whether it's, you know, off the record or not, but you're disseminating this information to reporters, you should really walk through this a little bit more. What are the implications of what I'm saying here, aside from like it being completely unfounded? That this was a developed bioweapon.
Which even he's backing off now, which I think says it all, that he's like, oh, I just mean like it might impact certain...
Well, that's the thing. He addressed the question as to whether a pathogen could impact certain types of ethnicities, which in and of itself, I think is questionable. But he didn't address the fact that he said it was targeted, which means that somebody deployed a bioweapon. We should really get on that. Maybe they should bring that up during the hearings tomorrow when he's testifying with the Republicans.
That's
Why
like
would they target it this way?
That's like the Mott and Bailey, M-O-T-T, and Bailey, B-A-I-L-E, Castle fallacy, which basically, like, you have two different claims. One is the more fortified claim for when you really need to, when you're called to account, and that's the Bailey, the Castle, and the Mott is like the less fortified claim that you can make when you're not in company that's going to challenge you on these sorts of things.
Yep. All right, folks, that is the phone portion. 4 more IMs. Mic'd. Next, Tim Pool will be wondering why a purple man wasn't cast for Thanos. Affluence, wretchedness. I felt compelled to pull out an old book of fairy tales when I saw that clip from Ben Shapiro from yesterday. The translation I have says she was as white as snow, red as blood, and black as ebony wood. I don't know, Ben, but I don't think any of those words are meant to be describing a race there. Depictions of Snow White typically have dark hair, red lips, and light skin. Nothing about this actress breaks from that description.
Yeah.
Aside from that not breaking from that description, who cares? Normal human. Can I get a shofar for hitting the big 4-0 today? I'm a longtime member. Can't get through the day without my shit lib fix. Thanks to everyone at the MR. Much love to all left is best fam out there. And the final I am of the day. Let's go here. Final I am of the day comes from Tommy Hot Tub. Would perhaps Ben's obsession with children's media come from the fact that his cousin was a successful child star with his own childhood defined by his parents' attempt to make him replicate her success? I don't know. Interesting.
Shapiro's cousin?
Didn't know that.
Neither did I.
Bradley, Matt, Emma in absentia, living in the inhabitable. I don't know. Have a great day, folks. Good job, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive,